As many of you already know, Windows 7 has been unavailable on pre-configured OEM computers since Windows 8 was released last October. If you're watching this video, chances are you are not a big fan of Windows 8 and you would like to install a different operating system. You may also have attempted this install already and found that you did not have the option to boot from anything other than the installed hard drive. OEM manufacturers are now loading a Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI, in place of the traditional basic input-output system, known more commonly as the BIOS. This was introduced to apparently protect us from ourselves. We can all thank the innovators over at Intel for that one. UEFI imposes something called Secured Boot. Secure Boot prevents booting from any media deemed to be legacy, such as CDs, DVDs, and USB drives. This video will show you how to regain control of your PC and load something other than Windows 8. We will not be covering Microsoft's licensing schemes, so be sure you hold a license for the version of Windows that you plan to use. Let's get started. For this particular video, we're going to be using an HP all-in-one. This works with any computer that uses the new UEFI. We're going to let it start up normal at first to show how quickly it bypasses pre-OS prompts. Go straight into Windows 8. Now we're going to restart. This time, as soon as it starts up, we're going to begin pressing and releasing the escape key to interrupt normal startup. You'll have about a split second of opportunity to catch it at the right time. Okay, at this point we're pressing and releasing escape. There we go. Now we can navigate down to computer setup. You can also use F10 if you prefer function keys. Once we're in computer setup, we just navigate over to security and go down to secure boot configuration. Here we see the danger Will Robinson prompt. As you can see, it's a nice vivid red to scare us into throwing in the towel and just accepting Windows 8. We're of course going to press F10 anyway. You'll notice that we can enable legacy support as long as secure boot is enabled, so we have to skip down to secure boot and disable that first. Now we press F10 again. The next part is not crucial, but my preference is to see all of the power on self-test messages, abbreviated here as post. Now we go back over to boot order to ensure that the system will look for our Windows 7 CD before it looks for the hard drive. When you exit, make sure to save your changes. The first time it reboots, you'll get a confirmation prompt. Just in case you accidentally pressed and released escape a bunch of times, navigated to specific options, and consciously made changes to them, just enter the 4-digit code and hit enter. Now because of the confirmation prompt, we missed our chance to boot from our CD, so we're just going to restart again and use our escape key trick again. This time when we interrupt normal startup, we're going to choose the boot menu. Navigate down. You can also use your function keys. Now navigate to whatever serial ATA number shows up for your CD/DVD drive. In my case, this is serial ATA number 1. Now we just wait for the Windows 7 setup to finish loading. Depending on the processor and amount of memory in your system, this might be a good time to top off your soda or go grab another snack. It is worth mentioning that when downgrading any version of Windows, that the OEM license will only cover a downgrade to the same edition. In this case, we're going to be using Windows Home Basic. Click Next. Obviously, install now, only thing we can click. And this may not show up in every Windows 7 CD. The one I happen to have has all the available versions. And whereas I can't provide a license for Windows 7, I can provide a copy of this media if any of you want to go to CaptainGigabyte.com and request one. Again, we're going to be choosing Home Basic 64-bit for this install. There we go. Obviously have to accept the terms. We're going to do a custom because of course we can't upgrade at this point, but I recommend doing a custom anyway just to give you more control. As you can see, HP wanted to make sure there wasn't a shortage of partitions for a single operating system. We're going to click Drive Options and delete all of them. One after the other until we have one large capacity of unpartitioned space. Now we're going to create a single partition that uses the maximum available disk space, minus of course the 100 megabytes that Windows 7 reserves for a bootloader. Yes, we'll let you create your 100 megs. Now we're ready to install. This next step definitely allows for a refreshing beverage, a snack, or depending on your system performance, maybe even a frozen pizza. Technically, you can stop babysitting this step after expanding Windows files reaches 1%. I like to wait until it reaches 4 or 5% to be sure the newly created file system doesn't have any read-write issues. If you're not a soda, snack, or frozen pizza type, I myself use this downtime for a couple of sets of push-ups and sit-ups. No one said that computer geeks have to fit any stereotypes. I have even used the time on one install to go outside and give my 99 Sportster a quick bath. Now at this point you're going to want to pause my video, wait for your install to finish, and then resume the video once you've booted into Windows for the very first time. See you shortly. Here we are with a nice clean install of Windows 7, no device drivers, no Windows 7 support from HP. No problem. We simply right click on the first device, go to Properties. On the Details tab we change Property to Hardware IDs. Take note of the VEN number and DEV number. This is the vendor ID and device ID respectively. Once we have the drivers, we would come back to Update Driver on the Drivers tab. Take note of these numbers for each device that's going to need a driver. Now, from a working computer with internet access, we need to launch our favorite browser. Big shocker, my favorite browser is not Internet Explorer. Go to www.pcidatabase.com. Notice I did not search for pcidatabase.com. I typed it directly in the address bar. Another shortcut I like to use is typing just the domain name and hitting Control Enter. This automatically inserts the www and the .com. Now initially it does not matter whether we execute our search from the header or down in the body of the page. The first ID we're going to search for is 8136. Having noted our vendor ID for this one as being 10EC, we know which one in our search results to click on. I'm going to copy the device ID. You'll see why on the next page. We are now on the Realtek Semiconductor page and we need to find our device ID again. We can scroll and browse, or we can go to Find and paste in our device ID. Right click and paste, and look at there. Another nice feature of Firefox is the right click menu. Crap, I meant to open that in a new tab instead of navigating away from PCI database. Now we browse down to Windows 7 and pick a download site that's geographically close to us. At the moment I'm not in China or the UK, so I'll choose the first US site. You'll want to save the driver where it can be easily located later and copied to a USB drive or CD. You may or may not wish to follow my obsessive compulsive folder structure. Now, we go back to our PCI database tab and search for the next device ID. We only get one result. Should be a no-brainer, right? Wrong. There's no download link. Come, Robin, to the Google. What do you know? Our first result is an HP link. Let's see what we got. Okay, discussion thread full of helpful comments. But apparently no download link. Let's try a different search result. Here we go. Now let's just make sure our version of Windows 7 64-bit is in the compatibility list. Voila! There we are. Once again, download to an easy to find location. Noticing a pattern yet? Okay, looks like it's taking a minute to download. How big was that? Let's see, 10.5 megs. Okay. Now before we get too far, we're going to want to extract our downloads. Okay, looks like we've got a setup package here. Now I personally hate long file and folder names, so I'm just going to satisfy my OCD real quick here. Bear with me. There we go. Much better. And we'll just continue down this path, get the rest of the drivers we need. Okay, now we've downloaded all of our drivers and we've returned to our clean install. We're going to right click on Update Driver, browse to the drivers folder that I've created on the C drive, C:, and drivers. There we go. Just make sure that include subfolders is checked and click next. If the status changes from searching to installing, you're all set. We'll cover the other scenario in just a minute. Okay, make that in another 2 to 3 minutes. There we go. Looks like we have an Ethernet adapter. Next device, same thing. Now you may remember this driver is delivered in the form of a setup package rather than the driver by itself. So we'll just go run that setup package. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, having just a little bit of trouble getting this driver to install. Alrighty then. We'll go ahead and update the rest of the devices, then go back to Google in search of a different package for our network controller, which we already know the make and model of, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Now, I stand firmly behind my claim that just because the manufacturer doesn't support a certain operating system does not mean that all is lost. If you run into driver issues like these, hit me up through the contact page of CaptainGigabyte.com and I will gladly provide you with direct support. Here we're going to perform a custom install of our ATI Catalyst drivers. AMD loves to throw extras in here, as do many other software vendors. Very rarely do I recommend performing a default or typical install. Now we get to watch the pretty green progress bar goes from left to right. Make sure there's nothing else that we want to uncheck there. And the progress bars are off again. Yet another opportunity to practice multitasking. You can see it's automatically installing some of the drivers there in the background as the install goes through. Now for video and chipset driver installs, I always recommend a restart, even if you're not asked for one at the end of the install. And we just click finish. And yes, we do want to go ahead and reboot. Forgot to take the CD out. We'll just let that go. Okay, looks like some new serial ATA drivers were included with our chipset. Let it finish, but if it prompts you, don't let it restart just yet. Restart later. I initially skipped over the video card, so I'll go back and get the hardware IDs for that real quick. And we still need to grab our network controller as well. Alright, here we are with all the drivers properly loaded. The rest is up to you guys. Please take a minute to browse my website for more videos, advice on hardware and software, or feel free to contact me if you have questions. Thanks for watching.